All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the entire universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown. All three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Firm by John Grisham. This was John Grisham's second book he wrote. Of course, A Time to Kill was the first book he wrote. The Firm was the second book. And this is the book that became a blockbuster, one of the biggest selling novels of the 1990s, or even any generation of books. I mean, John Grisham just became a household name with this book. It was like the Da Vinci Code of the 90s. And I read it when it came out. It was such a big flash that I was just like, well, I'll see what this big blockbuster book is about. And I'm telling you, I became a John Grisham fan right then and there. Actually, within the first couple chapters of this book, I'm like, this dude is dope. This book is sailing along at a great clip for a legal thriller, and it's just keeping me engaged, filled with one great scene after the next, and the tension just builds. I loved it, and I've got every John Grisham book since. I mean, here are all my John Grisham. That's my entire John Grisham. It goes back there quite a ways. I got them all. I don't know, maybe he's got 40 books out now. I don't know. But anyway, this one came out in 1991. Let's talk about the cover first, because I love graphic design and cover illustration. And this has got a very typical 1991-ish legal thriller type cover. I mean, it doesn't stand out or anything. The author looks real young there. I was really young when I read this. I was no more than a little wee tadpole. Now, I was probably, I don't know, old enough to read anyway. But anyway, it was one of the first forays that I took out of my normal fantasy, Dragonlance, Dungeons and Dragons, Forgotten Realms, sort of Shannara, type of book that I was usually just reading at that age. This is one of the first, it might have even been the first. There might have been a Robert Ludlum novel. I think I did this one first anyway. But it really started to get me on my journey of not just reading science fiction and fantasy, but reading, legal thrillers, political thrillers, mystery novels, all that kind of stuff. All right. So anyway, I reread this one recently because, I have not read it since 1991. However, when I read it in 91, it made such an impression on me. I pretty much remembered most everything that was happening and was going to happen. And not only that, but I think I've seen the Tom Cruise movie a couple times too. Anyway, the reason I'm rereading this now is because, well, I'm rereading all the John Grisham novels and leaving a review on the channel. But also, the sequel to this book is finally coming out. 1991, what is it, 2023? That's got to be some 700 years later. The sequel is finally coming out. And I think it's coming out like in a couple days. Anyway, it's going to be, arriving via Amazon on my doorstep here in a couple days. And I just wanted to reread this. It's amazing. What's it about? What's The Firm about? I mean, I've gushed in general terms about it here now for about 5 minutes. Okay, it's about Mitch. He is a young Harvard Law School graduate. $23,000 in student debt. 91. I was thinking, well, I graduated from college. I had no student debt. But I knew people that had student debt. And when you talk about people that have student debt nowadays in 2023, their student debt isn't just $23,000. It's like $230,000. It's just out of control. So when I was rereading this and looking at some of the numbers that were being thrown out, it was like, back in 91, 23,000 in student debt. Oh my God, that was like huge. And then he gets offered a job at the firm right out of college for $85,000 a year. And I remember in 91 when I read that, I was like, oh man, that's like more money than anybody could ever make in 5 lifetimes. I'm exaggerating a bit. But $85,000 for a Harvard graduate law student right out of the gate, 85 grand, that seemed like a lot. That was a lot. I mean, that was a big time salary for a graduate. I mean, that's what we pay rookie correctional officers at the Utah State Prison now. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's just like it's interesting to see how things have changed in 32 years, just monetarily. The way we think about money, the differences, and you know, my grandparents did it. You know, they told me that they bought their first house for like $3,000, and I was like, I could scratch together $3,000 in an afternoon. But man, they spent their whole life paying that off. It's crazy, right? Anyway, the firm that he gets a job from, I mean, they really are recruiting this guy Mitch heavy, this firm, and they kind of paying him a lot extra, like 85. Most Harvard law students, they only get about 60 grand with their opening job, but this law firm is paying him 85,000 because, well, they want him to move to Memphis, and they know that that's not a very glamorous place. And so they're enticing him. Not only that, but they give him a free car. They make sure that he gets a really nice house in a really nice neighborhood because they, with a good interest rate on the mortgage, because they want him to look like he's got some money right out of the gate, because that's important to the clients. Hey, our law firm in Memphis, we're top notch. We're going to make sure you got a real nice house. And his wife is ecstatic too, because she's like, wow, all these free gifts, all this cool stuff. And as you're reading this, and this was the allure to this novel for probably everybody that read it, including myself, was just, this is like winning the lottery. This dude is winning the lottery of life. And everybody kind of wants to live vicariously through him as this law firm just lavishes one massive cool gift on him after another. But it comes with a price. He has to work his ass off. He has to move to Memphis. He works his ass off. He works ungodly hours. And that's another thing that's interesting about this, is when you see the intricacies of what lawyers do and how much time they spend on things and how complicated the job can be. And John Grisham, who was a lawyer himself when he wrote this, really gets into the nuts and bolts of that. So not only are you kind of living vicariously through this Mitch and his new job and how glorious it is, but also you're learning a lot about how law firms work, how law firms operate, how they treat new employees, how the old employees are sort of settled in and ingrained into the business. I mean, they're partners in the law firm, and everybody wants to move up and be partner. And then, slowly but surely, this is a legal thriller where things are going to get bad. Everything is like, if it's too good to be true, it's you know that cliched little statement. It's like, you know, things don't pass the sniff test over a while. You know, it's like this or that is going on in the law firm. A couple of the lawyers in the Cayman Islands turn up dead. Well, what's that all about? That's a little shady. And then Mitch is kind of like, who am I really working for? What's going on? Who's following me? It seems like I'm being followed. It seems like this law firm is more of a cult, like a religious cult, than a business. And just things start to spiral into like dangerous territory. And he's kind of like thinking to himself, am I working for the mob? I mean, what's going on? And then but they're still sending him on like lavish vacations. They're sending him to clients that are in exotic locations. And it's just, and then that's about all I'm going to say. That's the plot. He's working for a firm that just is not on the up and up when it comes right down to the nuts and bolts of the whole thing. And he's got to figure it out. And man, do they put the squeeze on him? Do they put him into some situations that is just like lose, lose, lose? No matter what he wants to do, he can't win. He can't win. And that's the cool thing, is that's where the thriller, that's where the legal thriller, that's where the page turning is happening. And like I said, the page turning happens from the start when you're living this dream with Mitch. And then things start to twist over on themselves, and you're just like, oh my God. Oh, you see it coming. I mean, you see it coming. You're like, oh, this don't look right. Oh man, those guys look angry. Okay, this ain't gonna go well for Mitch. And then, before you know it, this dude is engrossed in some bad things. And the whole thing, then the rest of the novel, you try to figure out if he can get out of it. And dope book. I mean, just one of the best legal thrillers ever, and the sales say, money talks, man. People were buying this, and it's because it was good. It was fucking really good. And so I give The Firm 10 out of 10. It's just one of the best thrillers ever written, and probably, in my opinion, one of John Grisham's best. I mean, he has done a lot of good ones, but I think this is one of his best.